Imagine your body moving against your will. Your feet won't stop. Your legs won't obey you. You've been dancing for 3 days straight, and you cannot stop no matter how desperately you want to. Your heart is pounding, your feet are bleeding through your shoes, and people around you are dropping dead from exhaustion. And somehow, the authorities decide the best solution is to hire more musicians. This actually happened. Not in a nightmare, not in a fairy tale, not in the pages of a horror novel. This happened in a real city, to real people, in the summer of 1518. And to this day, no one can fully explain why. Welcome to one of the strangest and most terrifying events in recorded human history. A mass hysteria so bizarre, so deadly, and so completely outside the boundaries of rational understanding that for over 500 years, historians, doctors, and scientists have argued about what really caused it. It began quietly enough, the way all catastrophes do. On a sweltering July morning in 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, which was then part of the Holy Roman Empire, a woman named Frau Trophäa stepped out into the street and began to dance. She hadn't been invited to a celebration. There was no music playing. She simply started dancing, and she could not stop. For 6 days straight, she danced alone in the street, collapsing briefly, then rising again, her body seemingly driven by some invisible force. By the end of the week, she wasn't alone anymore. Within a month, the dancing plague had claimed somewhere between 50 and 400 victims, depending on which historical account you trust. Men, women, and children were all seized by the same uncontrollable compulsion to dance. They danced in the streets, in their homes, against walls, through exhaustion, through injury, and in many documented cases, all the way to death. Physicians who examined them found no natural explanation. Authorities were baffled. The church was horrified. And here's where it gets even stranger. The city council, desperate to end the madness, made a decision that defies all logic. They concluded that the only way to cure the dancers was to let the dancing run its course. So they hired professional musicians. They cleared out guild halls and market squares. They even brought in strong men to keep the dancers upright and moving so they wouldn't hurt themselves while collapsing. The city of Strasbourg essentially threw the world's most horrifying, involuntary rave in history. It did not help. People kept dying. The death toll from heart attacks, strokes, and sheer exhaustion climbed through August. Eventually, the authorities reversed course entirely. They banned music, they banned public gatherings, they drove the survivors out of the city to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers, hoping religious intervention might what medicine and civic planning could not. Slowly, the plague burned itself out. By September of 1518, it was over. But the questions it left behind have never been answered with any satisfying certainty. Now, if you're finding this story as absolutely fascinating as it is deeply unsettling, this channel is exactly where you want to be. We dig into the darkest and strangest corners of human history every single week. Hit that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss one of these deep dives. History is so much weirder than anyone ever told you in school. So what actually caused the dancing plague? Historians and medical researchers have proposed several theories, and none of them are entirely comfortable. One of the most widely accepted explanations today involves mass psychogenic illness, essentially a form of mass hysteria triggered by extreme psychological stress. 1518 was a brutal year for the people of Strasbourg. The region had suffered through famine, disease outbreaks, and brutal cold winters in the years before. The population was living under crushing poverty and religious anxiety. In environments of extreme collective stress, the human mind can produce physical symptoms that spread through a community the same way a contagious disease does. The body, overwhelmed by trauma and fear, begins to malfunction in visible, dramatic ways. Another theory involves ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye grain, and when consumed, it can cause convulsions, hallucinations, and involuntary muscle spasms. It's the same substance that many historians believe contributed to the Salem witch trials. If the grain supply in Strasbourg had been contaminated, it could potentially explain the physical symptoms. However, ergot poisoning typically causes people to seize and contort, not to dance coherently for days on end. There is also a deeply human explanation rooted in the religious culture of the time. St. Vitus was specifically associated with a curse of compulsive dancing, and the people of the region believed deeply in the power of saints to both cause and cure illness. In a community already primed by religious terror and apocalyptic belief, the fear of St. Vitus's curse could itself have become the trigger. One woman began, and her behavior gave permission and shape to the hysteria that was already building under the surface of an entire traumatized population. What makes the dancing plague so enduringly chilling is not just the spectacle of it, it's the helplessness. These were real human beings, trapped inside their own bodies, unable to control their own movements, watching themselves dance toward death while everyone around them either joined in or stood watching with their mouths open. The terror of losing control over your own physical self is one of the most primal fears imaginable, and it has happened before and since. History records similar episodes of mass dancing hysteria going all the way back to the 10th century, and scattered outbreaks appeared across medieval Europe for hundreds of years. Strasbourg in 1518 was simply the most documented, the most severe, and the most haunting. 5 centuries later, we still don't have a single clean answer. What we do have is proof that the human mind, under enough pressure, in the right conditions, surrounded by the right beliefs, can do things to the human body that no rational system can fully explain. The dancing plague of 1518 is a window into something raw and frightening about what it means to be human, about how fragile the line is between our conscious selves and the chaos beneath. If this kind of deep historical mystery is what you're here for, you are absolutely in the right place. Subscribe to this channel right now and ring that notification bell because we uncover stories like this every single week, stories that the history books glossed over or never told you at all. The past is stranger, darker, and far more fascinating than you were ever taught. Don't miss what's coming next.